So this class is going to be what you would probably expect with stencils and mixed media. And that mixed media thing is quite scary to a lot of you. And it was to me. And then we went to Cadence and in Turkey and we did their education programme. And I had a choice to either go, oh, I can't do it, don't like it, or to just throw myself headlong in and just get on with it, which is what I did. And I came away really understanding the value of stencils after that. And the other techniques that we've done are amazing. But if you want to really just take that next step and try something that is more home decor and more structured, then this is great. So we've done some floral stencils, and one of them is this sunflower. And I also did a signature collection a while ago where you layered up stencils, so you built up the paste layers, and it was really successful, and I just wanted to show you that you can do that with this. So we've got two stencils that work together, and you could do this with ink and paint. So the first one is very open, and if you were doing that in ink, you would do, obviously, you block this off with the piece that you've saved from your stencil. You do this in yellow, and then this layer would line up perfectly over the top, and it will put you the light and shade in. And I'm going to do it with ink as well as a class on here, so you'll be able to see. So you then line this up and it goes on top of there. You've got to make sure your stencil's the right way around, otherwise it doesn't work. Funny that, right? And then you layer it up and you do it in different colours of ink. What we're going to do is I'm just going to teach you how to paste. And if you're watching this and you know how to paste, brilliant. But this is all about educating new customers as well and new people to stencils. So I really wanted to do this. It is absolutely imperative that you use some sort of adhesive to hold the stencil in place. So whether it's the Cadence stencil spray, which I've just had and now I can't find it. This, there we go, the Cadence stencil spray, which you literally just put a few blasts on the back of your stencil. You don't need a lot, it holds it in place. Or whether you use the Pinfly stencil glue and you add a little bit of water and you dab it onto the back of your stencil, it's up to you. Whichever you feel more comfortable with. Don't forget, if you're using the stencil glue, you need to let it go off. So don't just stick it straight down, because it doesn't feel sticky when you first put it down, but within a minute or two it goes really tacky. So I'm just going to press this down firmly because I don't want any paste to get underneath these lines here. I don't want it to bleed underneath. You can do it with paint as well, straight on. We're going to do some painting as well with some of these stencils. But you need to make sure that all the areas are really pressed down firmly, okay? I always use a metal palette knife. I just find it easier than a plastic one. It has a little bit more give to it and it's a bigger surface area. So I find using this, you'll get these in like cake decorating shops or, you know, things like that. But it's got a nice gift to it. And I'm going to use the Imagination Craft Structure Paste, which is the same as the Cadence one. They're both really, really good. They hold their shape really well. But you can also use the Cadence Gesso, because Cadence Gesso is really thick. It's almost like, it's very similar to this. This is a heavier body, but it really holds its shape. So if you don't want to invest in this, but you've got white gesso, as long as it's a really thick one, and I would definitely recommend the Cadence one, because the better the products are that you use, the better result you're going to get. It's like cooking. You know, if you buy really good ingredients, your meal's going to taste better than if you buy really rubbish ingredients. So I'm going to use this, and I'm going to make sure again that it's just pressed down firmly. So this is really thick. You can see in this part, if I just squeeze the part, it hardly moves. It really is thick structure paste. And it takes, depending on how thick you put it onto the canvas board, probably take an hour and a half to dry thoroughly. I would suggest that you have another little piece of board at the side of you and you just put a bit on in the same thickness. So instead of going and sticking your finger in it to see if it's dry, you can stick it in that bit instead, because you don't want to ruin it once you've done it. And you're going to pick it up on the back of your spatula, so your spatula is going to be that shape with the paste on top. And it's important to just lay it down and just pull it down like that. It's like you're buttering toast. Don't worry if you use a lot, but just go in one direction. I was absolutely thorough in making sure that the team used a certain line width in between all the parts of the stencil so that we know that they work, they're not going to break, things like that, because that's no good either. If it's too fine, you don't get a good result. So we've been absolutely thorough with that. I've driven them bonkers as usual, but it was worth it because I know that you're going to get an incredible product at the end of it. And I don't worry, because I like the idea of having, I mean, I'm putting this on really thick. If somebody else was doing it with a different technique, they'd be scraping it all off. I want that depth because I like the fact that it looks dimensional on your wall. It stands out, it stands proud, and I like that look. And I don't worry that I'm getting like, can you see where it's overlapping and it's creating lines? I don't necessarily want it really smooth. I quite like the look of that, almost like that plaster look. I like that. I think it works really, really well. So I'm then going to wipe everything back into the pot, just tap the pot on the table so that any excess product drops down, and then always take a piece of kitchen roll or a wet wipe and wipe around the lid, because this is going to set and you don't want it to stop your lid from opening. So that's a little bit of housekeeping then, and then lid straight back on, because as soon as it's exposed to air, it's going to start drying. And then this is the best bit, and I love this for the simple reason that it looks awful, and then you lift this stencil off and it's like, wow, I love it. And then we can go in and add colour to it once it's dry. So I'm just going to lift this up. So I just take my stencil and lift it up like that, and look at the depth that we've managed to get on that structure paste. So you can see there, that's thicker. So the thicker you put it on, the thicker the result is going to be. The thinner you put it on, the thinner it's going to be. Now I can see on these leaves, I've probably got it about 1 mil thick, which is nice. So it's going to stand proud. I need to leave that to dry thoroughly, and I need to clean this stencil. So I'm going to do it while you're watching. I know it's, you know, not the most exciting demo, but I think it's worth seeing how to clean it off. So palette knife, it's very much like embossing powder this. You look like you're using loads, but you scrape most of it back into the pot. All right, so back in, picking all this excess paste up. You will have a little bit of waste, but not as much as you think. And then stencil, that stencil is going to go straight into warm soapy water. So I've even brought my washing up bowl from the house to make sure that that goes in there. And then even this bit, you can pick up and put back in the pot. So you're using a really small amount of paste. It looks like you're putting a lot on, like it does, like I say, with embossing powder, but you're actually saving a lot of it back. But you'll end up with a fabulous finished, well, plaster kind of thing in effect on a canvas board. You can do your painting on your canvas first, so you could paint the background on your canvas first if that's what you wanted to do, or you can put a rice paper down. So if a white background scares you, you could do maybe a background wash with some paints, some acrylic paints, and give yourself a background. Or you could print something off one of the USBs that we've bought and paste over the top of that. But it's just a really, it is, I mean, now I'm getting stuff on my hands, so it is a little bit messier and you've got a bit of clean up, but I think it's really worth it because I really like doing this technique now. And I never, ever, if you know me for 16 years, I've been on the TV this year, you know me for that long, you know that I was never a messy crafter, never. And now I love it. I really love it. And I want you to love it as well because it is really good fun. And the results that you get at the end of it look really professional. So you've cut your own stencil from one of the designs and you've now created a piece of home decor. And again, you can make and sell these as many as you want. So that now I would leave to dry. And I'm just going to clean this stencil off. So I'm going to just go away for a minute or two while I clean this off and dry it. And then I'm going to show you how you double paste and you put another layer into place so that when we come back and do the painting classes, these are already dry. So a few minutes and I'll be back. Sunflower. So I'd done one previous because I was carrying on with that same video. I did stick my finger in it to see if it was dry. And that's why I'm telling you not to do it. This is now completely dry and you can hear It's solid, it really is good. Now, to put the layer on top, so normally you would do it with ink or paint, so you do your first layer and you do that, and we're going to do that as another little technique. But I want to show you about layering paste because it looks spectacular. Now you could just, well, no you couldn't really, you need to use both stencils. So you're going to position this back in place, which is why it's important that when you paste it in the first place, that you make sure that it's a good clean pull when you take it off, because then it just sits back. And that's why I lift my stencil like that, because then I know it's going to drop back in place. Put adhesive on the back of it again if it's lost it when you've washed it, because that needs to hold in place. Because if you just put the layering part on top of it, it won't fit inside. So you're then holding a stencil, you're trying to paste, and it's just a nightmare and you don't get the right result. And I'm not just saying that because I want you to buy more dough flakes to cut 2 stencils. That's not what this is about. It's about getting that technique. And you could take this image into Canvas Workspace, remove these leaves and the stem, and just put another one over the top with just the flower head and build that up. And then you could put your layer on top of that. And then you could do a double layer of that if you wanted to. So you can go as many as you want, but you need to have a stencil for each layer. So if you're going to do 4 layers, you cut 4 stencils of the different parts. They have to go on top of each other, otherwise it doesn't work. So I've now got some adhesive on here, and I'm going to position this over the top. And because it's a layer, it will want the actual sunflower will allow you to slot it back in, but it's not going to fit perfectly because it's a layer. But because I've got that other stencil underneath, it doesn't matter, because this is, you see, it's not dipping anywhere, but it's given me another area to paste into, and it's really cool. So try it, because you can get amazing finishes, and it's great if you then gesso over it or prime over it and then put gilding waxes on. You can go through with your stencil glue and put gilding flakes on. There's so many different techniques, but don't be scared of paste. Okay, you just, it's the simpler you make it, the better it is. So again, into my structure paste, I'm going to start at the top like that, and I'm just going to pull down. I'm going to put the rest on and just pull down, and I'm going to do quite a thick layer again. So I'm just going to go in, and I'm starting here and I'm just pulling down, and it's as simple as that. Okay, so the more you scrape off, the thinner the layer will be. The more you lay on, the thicker the layer will be. Common sense, really. So I'm just pulling that through, and I want some texture because I want the paint to pick up the texture. So I'm making it quite textured just by pulling like that. I'm not worrying about getting it nice and smooth because I quite like the texture of it. It's almost quite vintage then, a bit more shabby. But if you wanted to, you could do it, you know, really thin. It's up to you. If you're doing it on a card, perhaps I would do it on a really thick card, because there's obviously water in this, and you don't want that water content to warp your card. So think about what you're working on. But even though I'm adding more, I'm still using that. I'm still pasting in the same direction. That's the important bit. You don't want to be going backwards and forwards because it can go underneath your stencil. So now I'm going to lift both of them at once. So I'm going to grab both stencils and lift like that. And now, I love this technique. It makes me smile every time I do it. Look at that. Now it's going to be quite difficult to see because it's white on white, but you can see it there. Look at the dimension that you have got on that sunflower. Look how thick the leaves are at the bottom. Look at the layers that you've got there on that paste. It's absolutely fabulous. And then you will put your stencils back over and paint it. So make sure it's completely dry and then put your stencils back over and paint it. It's absolutely, I love it. It's one of the really, or you could just leave it white. You know, if you painted over the whole thing with a white pearlescent hybrid acrylic from Cadence, that would look stunning on a wall. And then you could do some butterflies out of Yupo and cut them out and put those on there, and that is a fabulous home decor piece. So I'm going to leave that now to dry, and because it's a double layer, I'm going to leave it overnight just to make sure that it's completely dry. You don't need to leave it that long, but that's what I'm going to do because I don't want to then start painting it and it move. But you'll get used to the drying times. It depends on how warm the room is. All those different things that you need to take into consideration. But then all this paste is going back in that pot like this. So I'll take it off the top stencil, and the top stencil will then go in my washing up bowl. And then if there's any excess on here, which there isn't really, and then that one can go in there as well. But it's a lovely, lovely technique, and don't be scared of it. Just be confident with it. Just go in and do it. And then all that goes back in the pot. Tap it down so it knocks it back down, and then wipe the lid. That's the bit I have to remember, is wipe the lid. You can add colour into this, so you can add paint into it, so you get different colours of structure paste. So you can do that as well, which is really cool. But it's just a really nice way of trying mixed media, just buying one product and just have a go with it. And you can do your stencils. So you might want to just do a little one and try it. If that big size is too overwhelming for you, just do a smaller version and try it and have a play. And the canvas boards are not expensive to buy at all. They're like £1 something for a canvas board now. They're really inexpensive, and you don't need a top artist quality one. You just need one, your box standard canvas boards, but it's a really cool technique. So we will leave that to dry thoroughly, and then we'll come back and paint it. I just want to recap what we did with the paste through the stencils, just in case you missed a little bit of it. So we cut the 2 sunflower stencils. So this is your main one with the actual flower on itself there. And then this is your overlay that goes over the top of that stencil. Okay. So we put stencil spray on the back. That's really, really important, either Cadence stencil spray or the stencil glue from Pinflair. And we positioned this down onto our canvas. And then we took the white structure paste, either this one or Cadence, and pasted through it with a metal palette knife. Let it dry thoroughly. And then we put the first stencil back in place, and we put the second stencil on top of it. And what the second stencil does, if you were doing this with ink or paint, it would give you an extra layer of colour. But by doing it with paste, it gives you a dimensional finish, which is super cool. And it looks like you can have it looking like it's 3-dimensional, which just looks fabulous when you put them on a wall, because there's texture to it. And I like that. I like having that texture because you can rub a little bit of wax over it and do different things. So now both layers are completely dry, and this is the process that you would go through if you were just using paint directly onto a canvas with no paste. So there's no point in me doing both because it's the same demonstration. But I've put my original one back over the top because that's the one that's going to go flat to the canvas. And then I've got myself a selection of paints. So I've got vanilla yellow, and I'm using the pale apricot, which is like a sunshine yellow really. And then I've got a green, and I've got a couple of greens. I've got spring green and yonka. And you have to, these are Turkish names as well. So I'm like looking at it going, I have no idea what that is. But those are the 2 greens that I've used. But any greens that you've got. And I like using the Cadence because the hybrid acrylics go on all different mediums. So glass, ceramic, all the different things that you can put them on. And they're a really good coverage. So you just get the result that you want. There's nothing worse than trying something new and using inferior products because, and we all do it. And I used to do it. You buy the cheapest stuff so that you can work out if you're going to like the craft, but sometimes you don't get a really good result. So just, I mean, these paints are not expensive by any stretch of the imagination because they're so highly pigmented. They go a long way, so they last a long time, but you will get a better result if you use a better product. So let's start adding some colour onto this. So I'm going to start by doing the yellow of the sunflower. Now I can't put my stencil piece back in here because I've now got dimension. So we have to think about how we hold our stencil brush. So I'm going to talk you through that as we go. What I like to do is just make sure the lid's nice and tight and knock it down. So just push the paint into the lid. So then you can pick it up from the lid. And that means that you're not putting it on your glass mat and wasting any, because this paint's too good to be wasted. We don't want that. And then I'll pick up a little bit out of my lid onto a stencil brush, and I'll pounce it on my mat so I get a nice even coverage right across my brush, like that. And I'm just going to start to go in. So I like to pounce. I like a pouncing technique. It works for me. You find if you prefer swirling it, if you swirl it, you will cover the edges as well. If you pounce it, you're more likely to just get the top. So we'll do a bit of both, and then you can see what it looks like when we're finished. So I'm going to address this bottom part first, because we're going to get very close to this leaf here. So I'm going to pick up my paint and I'm going to press in with my bristles so it almost goes vertical like that. Can you see I'm pushing right in like that? So we've got that nice paint, and then I'm going to go in and I'm just going to very gently pounce, and then I pick up a little bit more paint and I push that in, and I'm just going to swirl it because I want to get those edges, and then a little bit more. So when I'm going into the leaf, it doesn't matter because the green is going to be darker anyway, so it's going to cover over. But if you're doing a different pattern, I just wanted to show you how you did this, because I think it's important. And it's interesting, you know, I think I've probably said this already, but when you're really used to a product, you forget the basics, you forget to teach the basics. And sometimes you assume that everybody knows the basics, whereas I'm quite new to this. So I'm remembering, I hope, to tell you all these little hints and tips and tricks that I've picked up in the last couple of years that I found really useful. And I find that they're essential that we share. Now I'm getting some yellow in the middle, but I'm going to go over that with brown anyway, so I'm not worried about that. And I'm not really focusing on what I'm doing. I'm just kind of going around and doing it because, you know, we are within time restrictions, unfortunately, but you will spend more time on this at home. But if I find if I start with my lighter colours and I go into an area that's going to have a dark colour, that works perfectly because you're not going to see the dark anyway. So it just works perfectly. And I'm literally picking up the tiniest amount of paint, and the rest of that paint now will finish off this part of the yellow on the sunflower. It's lovely. It's a really lovely technique, and it's one of those techniques where you start it and it looks a mess and you have to keep going. Even if you think, well, I've kept going for like another 15 minutes, Mel, and it's still not looking good, just keep going till the end, because when you reveal this, it's the best feeling ever. It's like, it's just like, wow, I've achieved that. And it's really easy. I was like that all the time when we were in Turkey with the team, and from Cadence, and the girls who came with me were all kind of used to doing mixed media. And I was like, they said, oh, there were so many times when we wish we'd videoed your face or taken a picture, because your face was an absolute delight. It was lovely. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And then we can come back and pass it on to you. So I've got a little bit of this yellow. Now this is a fabric paint, but it doesn't matter because, you know, Cadence will go across different mediums. So all I'm going to do now is just put a little bit, and I'm being quite random now, because if you look at sunflower petals, they're not, you know, dark to light or light to dark. They're just quite random. So I'm going to just pop a little bit of this on here, and I'm stippling this time because I want that lighter finish. And there's no rush, you just, you know, take your time. And you can go back and cover over paint if you think, oh, I don't like that colour there, you can change it. And it's actually really relaxing. And if you can hold a brush and literally do that, you can do this. Everybody can do this. A little bit more of that paint, just because I want a little bit more depth down here. Like that. So that's that bit. And then I might go in with a little bit of gold. So Cadence also do a range of paints called Dora Hybrid Metallic. And when you see this, it's just phenomenal. Look at that. The shimmer in this, there's proper metal flakes in this. And when you squeeze it up, look at the shimmer that you get. Look at the layers of different colours that you get in there. It's absolutely beautiful. So it's worth investing in one of these. So if you're doing like the sunflower and you just want to have a try, get a little pot of the structure paste, get a couple of yellows, maybe get a dark yellow and a white so you can mix your own paler one, and then get a little bit of a metallic, because this makes a massive difference, and you need the smallest amount. So I'm just going to pick this up, and it doesn't look like it's doing much, but when I show you at the end and I move the stencil backwards and forwards, you'll see that shimmer. So I'm just using that in the middle of there, just flicking it up with my brush like that. Okay, so I'm happy now with that. So everything can go, lids go back on, because they are all water-based products, so you want to make sure that they lids go on, and that will go into water. I just get some washing up liquid in the palm of my hand, wet the brush, scrunch it round, and then get it under the tap and clean your brushes. So the next bit we're going to do, let's do the centre of this. So I've got brown here. This is a Dora paint as well, so we'll have some shimmer in this, and then I'm going to add a little bit of that gold in there as well. So again, I've got plenty in my lid. I don't need to go adding any more. Just pick up a tiny amount, dab it on here, and it's quite a red brown. This, it's really warm, it's lovely. And then I'm just going to go in and do this. And I'm not bothered if I get a little bit of brown on the yellow either, because that kind of happens with the sunflower. So don't be too worried when I'm going over the edges here. I'm trying to catch the bottom of those petals just a little bit. And you can always go in and just soften it a bit with your finger like this. But it's a lovely effect when it's done. It gives you that real sheen. And once you've tried Cadence product, which for me is a premium paint, but at a really affordable price. I don't know how they do the quality of this for the prices, because I was blown away. When we went, I thought this is going to be an expensive product, but actually I was really shocked, genuinely really shocked when I saw the price, because I was like, wow, that's phenomenal. So yeah, it's really good. And they are alchemists, you know, they have proper chemists in their warehouse, and the paint works, and they're just fabulous. So I'm just taking a little bit of that brown out there, put the lid back on, because that's plenty, and you saw how much I used, and this, you know, you're not wasting any that way. I like doing it this way. And then I'm just going to go back to my gold, and I'm going to, in fact there might even be enough left on my brush, but I'll show you what dry brushing looks like. So you put some paint on your brush, and then take a piece of kitchen roll. You could do this with gilding wax as well if you wanted to. And I just like to take a piece of paper towel and just rub off some of that. And then I'm just going to go in. It's better doing this when it's dry. And just highlight so it looks like the sunlight is hitting that sunflower, which of course it's going to do because they face towards the sun. So I'm just going to add a little bit of that on there. Right, I'm happy with that. And again, it looks a bit messy, doesn't it? You think this isn't going to look awful when I take this off, but it looks amazing. It's the best thing. Right, so greens now. So I'm going to go in with the darker green first, I think, and then I'm going to highlight with the lighter green. So give them a good shake, because they've come from Turkey, so some of the oils in there can settle during transit. So you want to just give it a good shake. And then I've got enough in my lid there to do several sunflowers, actually. Just a little bit on your brush. Tap it out so you get a nice coverage, very much like we did with the kitchen sponge and the stencil glue when we retacked our mat. And then again, I'm going to be careful when I go in here, because this is the part where you need to be careful, because you don't want to necessarily get that green on that petal. So just take your time. You could do it with a regular paintbrush, like a flat ended brush if you want to, but I wanted to just show you that it's achievable without doing that as well, because if you're buying a stencil brush, you could just use one brush. I don't want you, if you haven't tried this before, I've got a bit of yellow on there now, but I'll get that off after. I don't want you to think that you've got to buy loads and loads and loads of new stuff. I want you to just have a play with what you've got, because you might really surprise yourself and come up with something completely different than you've ever thought before, which is what the best bit of crafting is about, isn't it? So I'm going to go in and I'm going to rub over this with all this dark green. So I'm putting in one flat matte colour, pick up a little bit more green paint, and I'm going to swirl this because I want those edges to be covered like this. You will get some stray bristles coming out of your brush. Doesn't matter how much you spend on a stencil brush, you'll always get that because you're creating friction. But I've had these brushes for a while. There was some I used to use when we were doing Dreamweaver stencils back in the day, the metal stencils. That feels like a lifetime ago. But this could be a Zentangle piece, or it could be ink. You know, it's entirely up to you. You put your style onto these stencils and see what you come up with, and please share them with us on the Innovation social pages, because we always love it when you send stuff in and we can share it and you can inspire other crafters, which is lovely. There's nothing better than somebody saying to you, oh, I loved that class, it was really good, you know, you did, I really learned a lot. And I think that's, certainly as a professional crafter, that's what I strive to achieve. So we've got that dark green in now, and that's already starting to dry, okay? So I've done that top leaf. I'm not going to repair the little bit of yellow yet, because I'm going to go in with another green. So I'm just wasting my time if I do it twice. But I'm going to pick this paint up on the same brush, and I'm just going to dab some of this out. And I might mix it with a little bit of that green, a little bit like Stephanie mixes her paints when she's doing her one stroke classes. And I'm just going to then just sweep this across this leaf. And you can see how well the stencil is being held in place, and I haven't re-sprayed it since we did the first part of this, so you can see that that stencil spray works really well. It doesn't leave any residue at all, but you need a small amount. Don't go spraying it like this or for ages. Just put a little bit on the back. Right, let's see what that looks like now. So make sure you put your lids back on your paint, and let's take this off when we're ready. This is the exciting bit. So we then lift this stencil and you have a fabulous piece of wall art. How lovely is that? Now I'm just going to go back to my yellow, because I've got a little bit of green on there, and actually it doesn't bother me, but just to show you what I do sometimes is pick it up on my finger and just put it over the top there, like that, and just let that layer dry, and then potentially go in with another layer. But I quite like that. In fact, what's really nice, just looking at this, so this is what I mean about playing, because I've just thought about this now. If I go back in with my finger and I just tap it, it almost gives it another texture again. So just here and there, just to add a low light, if you like. Just add a little bit on top, because it's raised enough for you to be able to do that. Quite like that. I do this all the time. And then I get distracted because I found something new and stop doing what I should be doing. But I think we're all like that, aren't we, as creative people? Right, there we go. So I'm happy with that now. Leave that to dry. In fact, it's more or less, look, touch dry now, more or less. So that's how you would put, and turn it around so you can see it nice and clearly. And that's how you would do your paint on paste. And you would do exactly the same process, but without the pasting, if you just wanted to do it with paint. So give it a go. Just have that self-belief that you can do it, and you will absolutely achieve that. And then share it with us, please.